Imagine waking up one morning, stepping onto a small fishing boat, and not touching land again for 438 days. No land. No help. Just the ocean, endless, merciless, and terrifyingly empty. This is not a movie. Not a myth. Not an exaggeration. This is the true story of a man who spent 14 months adrift in the Pacific Ocean, surviving on raw fish, sea birds, drifting trash, and faith itself. His name was José Salvador Alvarenga, a simple fisherman whose life turned into one of the greatest survival stories ever recorded. Tonight, we dive deep into his unbelievable journey. A journey filled with storms, starvation, hallucinations, death, and hope that flickered like a dying flame. How did he survive? Why didn't the ocean claim him? And what horrifying things did he witness in those 438 days? Stay with me. Because this story will take you into the darkest, quietest, loneliest place on Earth, the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It was November 2012. Alvarenga, a seasoned fisherman working in Mexico, prepared for a routine 30-hour fishing trip. He wasn't alone. Joining him was a young man named Ezequiel Cordoba, a 22-year-old who had never been to sea before. Unlike Alvarenga, Cordoba wasn't a trained fisherman. He didn't know the waves, the winds, or the moods of the ocean. Their boat was tiny, a simple fiberglass fishing vessel with no cabin, no shelter, no modern navigation, and no emergency radio. Just a motor, nets, a few supplies, and hope for a good catch. Nothing seemed unusual. Until the sky darkened. It started with cold winds sweeping across the water. Then thick clouds rolled in, swallowing the horizon. Within minutes, the peaceful ocean turned into a roaring beast. Waves smashed their boat like fists. Rain hammered their faces. The motor sputtered, choked, and died. Alvarenga tried calling for help, but the radio was destroyed by the storm. Water began filling the boat, lightning cracked open the sky, and both men held on, praying they wouldn't be thrown into the sea. For 5 hours, the storm raged. When it finally passed, the ocean returned to a deceptive calm. But the boat was no longer anywhere near land. They had drifted far, carried away by powerful currents. They no longer knew where Mexico was. There was no radio. No paddle. No sail. Just endless blue stretching in every direction. At first, the men believed rescue would come. Fishing boats always passed through these waters. But one day passed. Then 2. Then a week. No boats. No planes. No land. Their food quickly ran out. Their water supply dried up. The sun became their enemy, boiling their skin, burning their eyes, draining their hope. Alvarenga began catching fish with his bare hands. Sometimes he would dive into the water and grab them as they darted beneath the boat. He taught Cordoba to do the same. But drinking water was the real problem. They relied on rain. Sometimes it rained just enough to stay alive. Other times, the sky remained empty for weeks. They drank turtle blood. They drank bird blood. They chewed pieces of jellyfish for hydration. Their bodies weakened. Their lips cracked. Their minds started slipping. Hunger is painful. Thirst is torture. But loneliness, that is something darker. The two men talked to keep each other sane. They shared stories, laughed at memories, prayed together. But as weeks turned into months, their conversations grew shorter. Their bodies grew thinner. Their minds started drifting more than their boat. Sometimes, the silence between them lasted hours. Sometimes days. The ocean at night was the worst. Pitch black. Silent. With only the sound of water tapping the sides of the boat, like a reminder that they were trapped. Young Cordoba couldn't handle the raw food. He refused to eat turtles. He hated the taste of raw fish. He tried to survive on small amounts, but it wasn't enough. He began hallucinating. Talking to invisible people. Having conversations with his mother. Staring at the sky and whispering things Alvarenga couldn't understand. One morning, Cordoba said something that broke Alvarenga's heart. "I can't do this anymore. I'm dying." Alvarenga begged him to eat. He begged him to drink. But Cordoba was already too weak. His body gave up. He closed his eyes, and never opened them again. For days, Alvarenga kept Cordoba's body in the boat. He talked to him. Held his hand. Cried over him. Loneliness had become so intense that even a dead companion felt better than being completely alone. But eventually, something inside Alvarenga broke. He realized he couldn't carry a corpse forever. With trembling hands, and tears burning down his face, he pushed Cordoba's body into the sea. He watched as the only other human he had left, disappeared into the deep blue. From that moment on, Alvarenga was utterly alone. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Alvarenga's beard grew long. His skin became leathery and burnt. His mind swung between clarity and insanity. He talked to birds. He talked to the sky. He talked to God. Sometimes, he talked to Cordoba, imagining he was still there. But despite his declining mind, he never stopped fighting. He caught fish with his hands. He trapped birds under his shirt. He captured turtles and drank their blood to stay alive. He ate floating garbage, plastic bottles, bits of debris, anything with a trace of food on it. He watched sharks circle his boat at night. He saw large ships far away, but none close enough to see him. Sometimes he waved his arms so hard that his shoulders burned, but no one noticed. The ocean was too big. And he was too small. Occasionally, floating objects drifted by, plastic crates, lost fishing gear, pieces of wood. To Alvarenga, each one felt like a sign, a reminder that somewhere, far away, humans existed. Once, he found a small, dead bird floating on the water. He cried, not because it was food, but because it meant he wasn't the only living creature suffering in the endless ocean. But even during his darkest days, one thing kept him alive: he wanted to see his parents again. Every time he felt like giving up, he imagined their faces. Their voices. Their hugs. That vision kept his heart beating. After 438 days, something strange appeared on the horizon. At first, it looked like a cloud. Then a shadow. Then, something real. Green. Trees. Land. For the first time in over a year, Alvarenga saw something other than blue. His heartbeat exploded in his chest. Tears blurred his vision. He screamed, cried, laughed, everything at once. The currents pushed his boat closer, closer, closer. Finally, the boat crashed onto a reef. Alvarenga fell into the water and crawled onto the sand, kissing the earth, sobbing uncontrollably. He had reached the Marshall Islands, halfway across the Pacific Ocean. Villagers spotted him wandering weak, barefoot, covered in hair, and barely able to speak. They didn't believe he was human at first. He looked like a ghost who had returned from the dead. When they finally understood his story, they contacted authorities. Medical teams rushed in. Doctors were stunned. No one should survive 14 months at sea. Yet here he was. A living miracle. News of his story spread across the world. People called him a liar. Scientists called him lucky. Survival experts called him the impossible man. But his body told the truth. Sun scars, salt damage, infections, muscle loss, everything matched the story of a man who had been lost for an extremely long time. Even after survival, Alvarenga carried the weight of his trauma. The solitude. The hallucinations. The death of Cordoba. But he also carried something else, the knowledge that the human spirit, when pushed to the edge, can do the impossible. His story remains one of the greatest survival tales ever recorded. 14 months. 438 days. Nearly 7,000 miles. One man. One small boat. A battle against the most powerful force on Earth, the ocean. And he lived. Because hope, even the smallest flicker of it, is stronger than the darkest waves. When José Salvador Alvarenga finally returned home, the real storm began. Yes, his body survived the ocean. But now, he had to survive the world. Doctors were astonished. He had severe dehydration, muscle atrophy, infections, and psychological trauma. He could barely walk on his own. He barely remembered how to sleep in a bed, or stand under a roof, or drink clean water from a glass instead of cupping his hands to catch rain. For weeks, nurses said he woke up in the middle of the night, sweating, trembling, shouting things like, "The waves. The birds, catch them. Córdoba, don't leave me." Sometimes he would curl into a corner of the hospital bed, covering his head as if another storm was about to swallow him. The ocean had left him physically alive, but mentally shattered. And yet, slowly, day by day, he began remembering how to be human again. He learned to walk with shoes. He learned to eat warm meals. He learned to sleep without hearing the sound of waves slapping against his boat. But something else was waiting for him, something darker. His story spread across the globe like wildfire. Newspapers called him, the Miracle Man. The Pacific Survivor. The Ghost of the Sea. But not everyone believed him. Many accused him of lying. Some claimed his story was impossible. Others said he had made it up for fame and money. They didn't understand, no one understood, how much he hated telling this story. Every interview felt like he was dragged back into that boat. Back into that emptiness. Back into the moment he let Córdoba's body slip into the sea. And then came the cruelest blow. When Córdoba's family heard the story for the first time, they didn't feel sympathy, they felt anger. They believed that if Córdoba died, it must have been Alvarenga's fault. They even filed a lawsuit, demanding $1 million. $1 million. Alvarenga stared at the papers in silence, shaking, unable to breathe. The man who survived the ocean was now drowning in accusations from those who had never stepped foot on a boat. He broke down and cried, not because he feared losing money, but because he had loved Córdoba like a brother. He had watched him die. Held him. Begged him to live. And now the world was punishing him for surviving. Even after returning home, the ocean followed him. Not physically, but inside his mind. He couldn't open a tap without remembering days with no water. He couldn't sit in a quiet room without hearing the phantom echo of waves. He couldn't see cooked fish without remembering the raw, bloody pieces he had eaten to stay alive. Therapists said he likely had PTSD. They said he might never completely recover. Some nights he woke up screaming. Some nights he stayed awake, afraid that if he closed his eyes, he would wake up again on that small boat, floating in an endless ocean. And yet, there was something stronger than fear. Gratitude. Every morning he woke up and felt the solid ground beneath his feet. Every time he saw a tree, a bird, or a human face, he smiled. These were miracles to him, miracles we take for granted. With time, Alvarenga realized something powerful: he had survived for a reason. He began speaking to students, fishermen, survival groups, and people suffering from depression. His message was simple but deep: you don't die when the ocean wants you to. You die when you stop fighting. People listened. People cried. People thanked him for reminding them that even in the darkest storms, hope is enough to keep a human alive. He wrote a book titled 438 Days, and for the first time, he allowed himself to revisit every detail of his nightmare, not to relive it, but to release it. Little by little, the ocean's grip on his mind loosened. Years later, something unbelievable happened. Alvarenga decided to return to the ocean. Not to fish. Not to travel. Not to test fate. He went to say goodbye. He walked along the shoreline, letting the waves touch his feet. He whispered a prayer for Cordoba. He thanked the ocean, not for the suffering, but for the strength it forced him to discover. He cried, letting the memories wash away like foam on the sand. He didn't hate the ocean anymore. He understood it now. The ocean didn't want him dead. It simply tested whether he wanted to live. And he proved that he did. Today, José Salvador Alvarenga lives quietly, far from cameras, far from fame, far from interviews.